heard it there. The worst is over, certainly for the Eurozone crisis. Do you buy that?
Yeah, great. Just in time for Christmas, we can all go on vacation. Obviously, none of us are buying it because he's talking about over a very long period of time. Maybe he's just seen the light at the end of the tunnel. We're focused on the short term.
But at least the light at the end of the tunnel is not an oncoming train.
Yeah, and we don't know that either yet, because there is that huge amount of debt which still has to be dealt with, growth which still has to be dealt with in Europe, and let alone aside from that, we've still got the oncoming train of the fiscal cliff in the US in any event. I don't want to sound pessimistic. All I'm saying is that the long-term issues are very different to the short-term, day in, day out and week in, week out issues, which keep on coming at great regularity, not least the issues regarding Greece, bank bailouts out of Spain, and so on. And that's going to continue week in, week out. All this longer term stuff about bank regulation, that's great, that's fine, doesn't really impact us on a day-to-day basis.
Well, if these efficient markets, the all-seeing, all-efficient markets share that view, why are they at 18-month highs here in Europe? Why are yields coming down, and why is the euro back above 131?
Equities, let's start with those. If you look at the earnings ratios on those and the quality of earnings that have been coming through, we've actually been overly pessimistic on that. So we're coming off from a low base. And actually, some of us have been saying for the whole year and for next year as well that equities continue looking attractive. And that's actually also a function of quantitative easing. It helps boost spending and therefore earnings for companies, and also makes equities more attractive relative to other asset classes, in particular relative to bonds, of course. And so that's one of the reasons you're seeing that. And in terms of the euro and how it's performing, well, actually, it's never plummeted off the edge of a cliff despite all of this crisis, and that's not least because it remains a sort of a quasi-reserve currency, because all you've got is that or the dollar in effect, and therefore it's going to be one or the other. And so again, you're coming off a fairly low base. Things aren't as bad as they could be, but don't read into that some great bullishness for the currency.
Okay, and just to finish up then, let's move to the UK. Last night, S&P lowered its outlook, kept the AAA rating, but lowered it to the outlook to negative. The AAA rating is going to go some point soon, probably. Would that be such a big deal?
No, it wouldn't, because if you look at what's happened to France, or certainly in the United States, it doesn't have a big impact on the cost of borrowing for the governments just because they drop from AAA to AA. And that's partly a reflection of the fact that the credit rating agencies don't have much credibility since the credit crunch, because they weren't exactly brilliant at doing their job at that time either. So I'm not too worried about losing that. The problem at the moment is just because you spend doesn't give a multiplier effect onto GDP, and therefore you're better off cutting spending to improve your balances than you are to increase spending in order to try and boost growth and increase tax revenues. Now, if you could find the areas of spending which did have that multiplier effect and increase GDP and increase tax revenues, that'd be the areas to spend, and that would be fine. The problem is those seem far and few between, and therefore you might as well try and cut spending instead in order to improve your debt to GDP ratios.